welcome to another brand new episode of Dingers and Stingers, the podcast that plans to get down to the bottom of whether or not running backs matter. Got a lot of running back talk on today's show. We're going to be discussing the free agent running backs, top of the class at least. Similarly to how we discussed wide receivers last week, we'll talk about running backs. We'll rank this, the top of this class, and talk about who we'd like, to see and who maybe doesn't have as much to offer as others. And then we'll give our dingers and stingers at the end of this show as well. I'm Dallas, that's Drew, and that's Matt. And first up, we are going to talk about some things that made some headlines. Yes, it's the off season, but yes, still headlines are being made. The combine started today as we're recording. It's the 26th. So more headlines to come as players, show their stuff on their way to the draft. But we won't talk too much about combine stuff today. We're going to talk first about a signing. So a man who has taken himself out of our discussion of the free agent running backs later on is Javonte Williams. He signed a new contract with the Dallas Cowboys, the team he was with last year, and that contract is for 3 years and $24 million. So, a decent contract for a running back these days, and certainly somebody who contributed a lot to the team last year. And let's just start here. Do you like this signing for the Cowboys?
I'll be honest, I do. I think that this is a super reasonable a paycheck, and Javonte Williams had a very resurgent year on a Cowboys offense, and honestly behind an offensive line that I thought would have regressed a lot. And I don't know if I'd have to dig deeper into the numbers, but I don't know if their offensive line was necessarily all that good. They had some decent players on it, but this is the first offensive line for the Cowboys in a long time where we haven't been able to look at it and say, well, they still got, Zach Martin and Tyron Smith on there, and they're still going to be this dominant, run game offensive line. And yet Javonte came out and kind of had a career resurgence, and he looked not only explosive, but he looked like he could kind of carry the rock and be that workhorse back. Still not like the most dynamic receiving back, but at the end of the day, a shorter term deal. I mean, these 3 year deals are really easy for teams to get out of, especially because I don't know the numbers off the top of my head of where they put, the signing bonuses versus the guarantees. For all we know, it could be super front loaded, and the last 2 years of this deal could have no guarantees, no dead money. So I like this contract for both sides. Javonte gets a nice little paycheck after having kind of his first breakout year, true breakout year. And the Cowboys get to hold on to a player who performed really well in this offense.
Yeah, I mean Javonte Williams is a guy I root for him. I mean I had high hopes for him when the Broncos drafted him. Never really found his potential in Denver. Injury derailed a year, and then it affected the next year, and then it just never kind of came together after that. And I'm glad he's found his renaissance with the Cowboys. Yeah, I think this is great. He got his money. That's, $24 million is generational wealth, whether he sees all of that or not. That's a good paycheck. And for a guy who couldn't really make it happen with his first team, that's not a given that you'd ever get a payday like that. So good for him. And yeah, I think it's good for the Cowboys. It's not super high risk. And, if he plays like he did this year, then that's a bargain for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, as much continuity as you can get from this offense, right? Is a good idea because, the defense last year was really the problem with the Dallas Cowboys. They really stunk on defense last year, and they really did not stink on offense last year. They were, especially through the first part of the year, they were really, really good on offense. And so as much continuity as you can get, I think is a great idea. They haven't, I don't think they can do it yet, but they have plans to franchise tag George Pickens as well. So the idea is that he's coming back for next year as well. So that's another player who really had a nice year for them last year, who is probably going to be coming back. So I like what the Cowboys, what the idea is here. The idea is to just run this offense back as much as you can, and just kind of make some improvements on defense, hopefully, and then also hope that they improve when it comes to their performance last year. And if you can get the defense to improve even to like a top half of the league defense, I think you're talking about a team here who can really make a run at their division. So, I think that this is a good move to start the offseason for the Cowboys, because I think that it shows that their priority, to me, is in a good spot, which is to kind of keep the offense, try to keep it rolling here. All right. So next, sort of uh, piece of news slash rumor slash whatever you want to call it that we're going to talk about here is Malik Willis. Okay, so he kind of is part of a quarterback class here of free agent quarterbacks who, don't necessarily jump off the page at you, but there are some guys here who could, on the right team and in the right situation, make an impact, and Malik Willis is one of those guys. And he's been rumored to eventually, whatever team signs him, to be commanding a contract worth $30 million annually. So this is not small money. This is, the money that a quarterback makes when he is going to contribute meaningfully to, a team's success. So let's try and make sense of that. Is Malik Willis that kind of guy? Do you think he's worth that price based on what you know and what you've seen from him?
I think my initial reaction to it is I'm curious to see the length of this contract, right? Is this going to be a 1 year deal that is $30 million, or is this going to be someone giving him a 3, 4, 5 year deal? I think that'll matter a lot. I think when you look at like kind of the number just right on the page, there's an initial sticker shock because it wasn't all that long ago for us that like 30 million was kind of feeling like top of the market for most positions. Like, the best players were making in the 30 million range, and that number has like pretty quickly ballooned, where when you realize that would actually make him like the only real like starting legitimate guy that's not on a rookie deal that would be behind him, is like he'd be in like the Justin Fields range. And then you start to think, well, that feels reasonable. Like I would say Malik Willis in his time has earned kind of the right to be in this range. And like, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, they are in this low 30s range. They're at 33, each of them respectively, in terms of the average value. And so I'm like, placing him right behind there, he'd be like the 20th highest paid quarterback. And last year, he proved a lot. And the year before that, when he had to step in for a few games, he proved a lot. And so, outside of his time with Tennessee, he's actually looked like a really competent quarterback. And, it begs the question, like, based on what you've seen from him, would you rather be paying, 30 million to Malik Willis or 46 to Kyler Murray? Or, Deshaun Watson's making 40 something as well. And you look at some of these guys, I mean, Trevor Lawrence, granted, had a resurgent year. He's making 55. Like, he's almost double what we'd be talking about from Malik Willis. Tua, obviously, we know what's happening with him. He's making 53. He's almost double Malik Willis. So, like, I think that 30 million actually, like, when you take the sticker shock away, is a very reasonable contract for him to be making at this point.
Yeah, I totally agree because as someone who doesn't follow the finances of football super closely, initial reaction is, wow, 30 million a year? That's crazy. And then yeah, like you said, I looked up the quarterback contract values and it's like, okay, yeah, like I think Malik Willis has earned the right to seek a starting job, or at least competition for a starting job this offseason. And when you narrow the teams down to like who would be paying him to be a starter, like you wouldn't pay a backup that much, but you would pay a starter that much. You saw, like you mentioned, Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield are both in that range, both guys who kind of needed to prove it again after not coming out of the gate super hot in their NFL careers. That kind of makes sense for Malik Willis. Now, if you're a team looking to sign a guy like him, you really have to trust your evaluation because we've seen it work out where guys, like back up for a while in a good system or even for just a little bit in a good system and then end up being quality starting quarterbacks. We've seen it with Sam Darnold, obviously, just won a Super Bowl. Geno Smith was a similar situation. But then you've seen guys that, we thought, okay, they kind of spent years as a backup and here comes the next step, and they just never took it, like a Jimmy G, um, or, like a Matt Flynn got a decent paycheck back in the day before Russell
Been
Wilson
there.
just took over that job. So, um, you can miss, and if I'm him, I'm taking the most money. Like that, it is what it is. But I'd also try if I could to be a little choosy. Like you don't want to go to a place where you're just gonna wither and die. Like not that
Mhm.
the Browns need another quarterback in that room, but if they came knocking, I wouldn't really be interested. The Jets, like a lot of teams who aren't going to get the number one pick, might be knocking on your door. I don't know if I would trust my ability to to make the Jets competitive. I would try to be a little choosier in terms of actual contenders or like halfway decent spots.
Yeah.
Steelers don't have a quarterback. Like maybe they could take a swing on him. Seems like maybe they want A-Rod back. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of teams happy with their quarterback situation, so we'll have to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing working against him at this point is it's a pretty limited pool of teams that actually need a starting quarterback this year. It feels like we have quite a big number of teams that are in kind of either the rookie contracts or in the waiting period of figuring out if their guy is the guy. So I'm curious to see even what his market looks like because, like you're saying, Browns, potentially the Cardinals, the Steelers, potentially the Colts, Jets. That's pretty much the market that'll be out there for quarterbacks. The Raiders are probably taking Mendoza, and if not, just swap them with whatever team trades up for Mendoza. But like that's not a huge market for a quarterback. And then granted, he's also not the only quarterback that's going to be available. Like there's going to be some other names as well. So I'm curious to see what that market materializes as. But you know, 30 million, it seems reasonable when you actually take a look at where the league sits right now.
Actually, as you were talking, I talked myself into the Cardinals because if
Hmm.
they figure out what to do with Kyler Murray, I mean, it's LaFleur's brother is now the
Hmm.
coach over there, right? So
Hmm.
it would
The
maybe be
Cardinals make a lot of sense there.
a similar transition, like from one offense to another.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not, right? And I mean, the Cardinals, like all those weapons that they have, they just, I mean, it's hard to say they're a quarterback away when Kyler Murray is solid-ish. Like, I've not been the, biggest, you know, fan of Kyler Murray. Like on this show, I've kind of expressed how I feel like we've seen the best of him already, and we don't need to see any more. But it's hard to say they're a quarterback away when they have a quarterback who's solid, but they kind of do feel that way, like with all the weapons they have on that offense. So, having someone come in who could really light the place up with some energy and make these guys start to believe in not only themselves but the team again would be good. Yeah, as far as the price goes, you guys mentioned right now, it's not too bad looking of a deal. Just think about if it is a longer term deal, like 3 or 4 years. Think about how 30 million annually will look in 3 years. That'll look like bargain bin. Like,
Yeah, with
and if he's
Caleb
playing well,
Williams
Well, I mean,
and Drake
yep.
May coming up to get paid.
Hmm.
yeah, and I was gonna say that's exactly what, Sam and Baker are looking like right now, where they're both legitimate quarterbacks who are all pro level guys at this point, and they're gonna be making bottom half of the league money for the next 3 years. Like it is one of those things, like if you're willing to take the swing on, again, not a short-term deal, but also not a long-term deal, but just one of those like mid-length market deals. Like you hit someone with a 3-year deal, and I feel like you get to capitalize on a window. But it's also not impossible to get out of.
Yeah, totally. Totally. So, I'll be interested to see where he ends up because he will end up in some sort of situation where he is able to compete to be the starter, and I'll be excited to see for who that, for whom that is. Okay, so one guy who likely won't be competing to be a starter this year, but you never know, maybe. Kirk Cousins, who we are still talking about somehow. He is likely to be released by the Falcons when the league year starts. That's the word around the street. So that's how you say that, word around the street. Everyone knows that phrase, that everyone says it like that. Um,
Hmm.
so, look, Kirk Cousins, Falcons time, it was rocky from the start. They signed him and then immediately drafted a quarterback and gave up draft capital to do it. And then everyone was like, what the heck? And then now we find ourselves here, right? So, very rocky time for Kirk Cousins on the Falcons. He made a lot of money, though, for not doing a lot. I'll give him that. But I don't think that he's said at any point that he's ready to be done. So let's talk about where he might be off to next.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I think about teams that he fits, right? We talked about this, I believe, on last week's NFL episode, where we talked about like he's the type of guy who you can bring in who's not necessarily going to elevate your ceiling, but he's going to bring up your floor. And when you're talking about one of like the bottom teams who's trying to figure out what you even have with your roster, he's the type of guy who's not going to stunt the growth of your younger players, but is also probably not going to make you accidentally win 8 games and be drafting in like the 15 range. Like it's one of those types of things. So I could see him absolutely, especially if he's also chasing money, I could see him being the contingency plan after taking a swing on a younger guy for teams like the Jets, for teams like the Dolphins, some of these teams who they have this young core of players that they want to see, are they going to be legit, and maybe they need to wait a year for the quarterback position. Again, 2027 class is supposed to be loaded, so I could see the Jets or the Dolphins, I think, making a lot of sense. um Sneaky in there is got to still be the Steelers, like, if they want to go one old man to a slightly younger old man, like he's 5 years younger than Aaron Rodgers. Like, that's not insignificant. um and so I could see the Steelers kind of being an honorable mention here, but I'd say Jets and Dolphins make a lot of sense to me.
I kind of, I mean, on one hand, I definitely agree with you, but I kind of hope that he doesn't really seek out that last, like starting gig,
I agree.
because I don't think I don't think it's going to end well if he goes somewhere where like he's clearly the starter, because those teams that have a hole like that are not very good. And I don't think he has enough left in the tank to elevate a team from like not playoffs to playoffs. But what I would love to see is him to go to a good roster, if he's willing to do this, that has a quarterback, and then be around in case something goes down. Like I thought Joe Flacco was cooked, and then he signs with the Browns, who had a quarterback at the time. We thought Deshaun Watson was maybe still good at that point. He goes down. I think their backup also went down. What's his name with the double last name? And then Flacco comes in, and they end up making the playoffs that year. I would like to see
Mhm.
Kirk Cousins do something like that, and I don't know what team that is. If it's a team like I don't know, like putting myself on the spot here, but if he's like the Eagles backup quarterback or something, like I don't know, and they're built to win, and then they have their quarterback and he's just around for the ride, he makes some money, and then if something does happen, I don't think the Eagles would be totally screwed with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. They'd have to change the way they run things a little bit, but like you could kind of insert a lot of competitive teams in that same argument. So I'd like to see that from him.
Yeah, and to your point, I think that's the better career move, and I think that's better for just the league, is for him to become one of those Joe Flacco kind of journeyman veteran guys who, like, it's like the Ryan Fitzpatrick, where like he just like traveled the league for the last few years of his career, just gunslinging and not caring and like being fun, I could see Kirk Cousins doing that. Like, and I think he'd be really good at it. And to your point, I think that they would make a lot of sense. But you think about the Patriots, what he would do if he filled in for Drake May. I could see it with that run game. The Lions, I think schematically he could actually succeed there. Your Broncos, I mean, would the Broncos be Super Bowl, contenders last year if they had Kirk Cousins and not Jarrett Stidham? Maybe. Like, could he have ran
Yeah,
that
maybe.
offense competently? Like, I
He
definitely
wouldn't have done
see a
that fumble
scenario.
play.
No, no. Well, you never know. But like, it's definitely I could see that being the direction, and I would love for that to be the direction. Is just be like that veteran backup who is constantly pushing the young guy of like, come on now, like let's go. Not that he's going to be a great starter, but just it's something fun.
Yeah, man. The 2012 quarterback class lives. Still the beating heart of the 2012 quarterback draft class, as we all saw, is Kirk Cousins, and that class lives. Wherever he's off to next, he will be representing for that great class of quarterbacks. So, all right. So, look, let's get into sort of the main topic for today, which is the free agent running backs. So before these guys get off to, the races with signing their new contracts and things like that, we wanted to talk about them a little bit. And similar to how we did receivers last week, we're going to do running backs. So I've brought in the sort of, maybe 7 or so running backs. These are not necessarily like the top 7 in the class, but these are the 7 I thought were the most interesting to put up against each other. So brought in 7 running backs here, and we're just going to have you guys take these running backs and rank them in order from most to least desirable. All right, so they don't necessarily know where they're going to end up, but let's try to see who might be the one that we want and who might not be necessarily that for us. But okay, so let's name the running backs, and then we'll have you guys do it kind of similar to how we did last week. So we got Kenneth Walker III, Super Bowl MVP himself. Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, Nick Chubb, Rico Dowdle, Kenneth Gainwell, and J.K. Dobbins. Those are the guys we're going to talk about here on today's show. So go ahead and we'll have you guys start by giving us your top 2. So give us your top 2, and Matt, you go first.
Yeah, I think my top 2, and I would argue low key that it's more of a top 3 for me, but we can hold them off. My top 2 is going to be Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall. Um, I think that those are like the clear cut best 2 in my opinion. They're both still young, they're both explosive, they both are viable pass catchers. And I think that they're both not as situation dependent. We've seen Kenneth Walker be good on not good Seahawks offenses, or at least behind not good Seahawks offensive lines. And we've seen what he did this year with a really good offense, and he looked incredible and was a Super Bowl MVP. We've seen Breece Hall be really successful with some of the worst Jets teams I've ever seen. And he's had some tough years as well, but like I can only imagine what he's going to look like on any other team would essentially be an upgrade at this point. Um, and so I think those guys kind of transcend the need for a decent team for them to be good. So those are my 1, 2.
Yeah, I have the same 1 and 2. I actually labeled them 1A and 1B. Um, I think your team signing either one, you'd be pretty happy. They're the only 2 on this list, I think, that I would like break my typical like, you know, don't pay running backs argument to like be okay with my team paying. Like we'll see exactly where the contracts end up. But like I do think there are certain guys who can elevate the ceiling of your run game more than others. And I do think these are 2 of the better running backs in football.
So you're just coming right out and saying running backs don't matter. That's an aggressive take.
Yeah, I mean
Well,
that's exactly word for word what I said, I think.
Yeah, I'll clip it. I'll clip it.
Somebody clip it. But yeah, so you look, yeah, these guys are awesome. I think, Ken Walker, he, put it on display in the playoffs, right? Like, because he has spent most of the year this year, and this is um, it's kind of one of those things where, like, not what you want in a contract year if you're a player, right? Is exactly what Ken Walker was doing this year, which was sharing the backfield with Zach Charbonnet.
Hmm.
And not only sharing the backfield, but it seemed like for the majority of the season, while Zach Charbonnet was healthy, he was the goal line back. And so not only is Kenneth Walker sharing the backfield, he's giving up touchdowns to Zach Charbonnet, who, and in a contract year, that is not what you want to do. And so, but he got that, unfortunately, Zach Charbonnet got hurt, which is never something you want to see and not something that Ken Walker wanted to see. But with the opportunity that he had, he showed in the playoffs uh, just the kind of running back he can be if you give him the full workload. And all he did was like run all over every team that he played against and won the Super Bowl MVP. And so it was like, yeah, this guy's for real. He's got it. And so he was able to show that, hopefully in the stretch run there. And so hopefully that impacts the bag that he gets because I would like to see him get a bag. But yeah, so Kenneth Walker, Brees Hall up top, however you want to rank them. You've got them. You guys have them two in the top two order here. Okay, so now let's go to your middle three. All right, so the middle three running backs in this grouping here. Who you got?
Yeah, so for my middle three, my third guy, I have Travis Etienne. I think that he's the closest to that top two in terms of talent, in terms of age, in terms of versatility. Um, so he's my number three. After that, I would probably put, honestly, Rico Dowdle. He proved something to me last year that um, I didn't think of him as this guy, and he showed like he can be a not just like a workhorse, but a dangerous dual threat workhorse, which is rare. And so for him to be able to kind of put that on display, I saw it firsthand against the Rams twice, where he was the player I was most scared of on that offense, and he was kind of just gashing us in our two games this year. So Rico Dowdle would be my fourth. And then I'm gonna put J.K. Dobbins at the end of that tier list just because I do think the talent is there for J.K. Dobbins, and it feels like every time he's on the field, he averages like 5 yards a carry. He's a pretty explosive guy. He's productive, and he still just has this issue where he can only play like 6 games a year. And so until he gets that solved, I think that's going to limit him. He would probably be higher for me if not for that injury issue, but he's just such a productive runner, so I can't put him any lower, I don't think. So I'll put him there 5.
Yeah, I have the same three. I have a slightly different order. I actually put J.K. Dobbins as my top choice, and it's not that I necessarily think he's the best of these three, but I like last week when we did wide receivers, I kind of took this with the mindset of a Broncos fan and like what would I want my team to do. And trying to take that to other teams as well. Those first two guys that we mentioned are the only two of this group that I'd be comfortable giving like, a 4-year contract to or whatever it may take. I think Travis Etienne is probably better than J.K. Dobbins, but I don't think he's whatever his contract will be compared to J.K. Dobbins
Mm,
that much better. Because I think J.K. Dobbins at this point is like a 1 to 2 year deal type of guy. Um, and yeah, it sucks he can't stay on the field. But when he is on the field, he's been electric for 3 different teams now.
yeah.
I would love if the Broncos could bring him back as like kind of run it back with him and RJ Harvey. But I just kind of like the way he runs and things like that. So yeah, on a 1 or 2 year deal, I'd be fine with him. I have ETN next because I do think he's better than these other guys on the list, but it kind of just depends what the contract looks like. If it's a Javonte Williams type contract, that's cool with me, but like I don't want him getting the same type of deal that a Brees Hall or a Kenneth Walker is going to demand on this market. And then I have Dowdle after both of them. Nothing wrong with him. I think whoever gets him is going to be happy too. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons for him. Uh, I'd be interested to see the Panthers bring him back, but yeah, I just think like he's just slightly a tick below in terms of the eye test compared to those other two guys that I just mentioned ahead of him. Um, but we'll see. I think his contract will be somewhere in between Etienne's contract and Dobbins. I think he'll get more than Dobbins and probably less than Etienne if I had to guess. But I'm interested in him more than some of these other guys in terms of where he ends up.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see who takes that shot, right? Because the upside's there, but there's a risk there too. And that's the case with a lot of these guys, right? Like we've seen how good they can be, and we also pretty well know the risks you take with each one of them. All right, so same top two, same middle three. The order might differ, but that would mean naturally that we'll give our bottom two here, and these will also be the same. So let's go ahead and give the bottom two and sort of why we think that they are in that spot.
Yeah, so I'll start with the guy who's not last. I think Kenneth Gainwell is the next on this list. He showed that he can be a pretty dangerous back still. He had a great year for Pittsburgh. I think he surprised a lot of people, myself included. He's never been seen as much more than a kind of a gadgety, change of pace, complimentary running back. And when Jalen Warren went down, I mean, he was dangerous. He was going for 100 plus yards in those like 2, 3 games, and he was incredibly, incredibly efficient, being in that kind of committee backfield with Jalen Warren. And so I got to give him his props, man. Like he's earned something, and I think that he will get another contract that's decent pay for him. I don't know if the team's going to give him a big old, long contract, but I think he'll get a decent little payday here. But I think he would be my next pick. And sadly, that means that Nick Chubb comes in last for me. Nick Chubb, I was very excited about coming into this season, with Joe Mixon being injured and them kind of souring on Dameon Pierce. I thought Nick Chubb was going to be put into a pretty large role. And this is also was going to be his second season removed from his like gnarly injury. Um, and that was kind of the timetable people had, was that first season was going to be getting his legs back. He wasn't at full speed. He wasn't all these things. This year was supposed to be the year that, if he was going to be back, he would be back. And don't get me wrong, this is not a good offensive line that he played behind, but neither was the teams he played for in Cleveland, and it was a much different product on the field. And so there's the real concern that, especially when it comes to leg injuries for running backs, this may have been one of those that really just kind of destroyed the end of a career. And obviously a great running back in his time, but I do wonder, is it over for Nick Chubb as far as him being a feature type back or being able to be an efficient back? Like, is he going to be relegated to just kind of a goal line change of pace guy? I don't know, but I hope the best for him. I like Nick Chubb a lot, so it's makes me sad to put him down here.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with the same order. I think these two are clearly the bottom of this list.
Yeah.
And Nick Chubb is going to be entering his age 31 season as a running back, and I think that alone can put him at the bottom of this list when these other guys are 26, 27 years old. Um, he has probably, the argument for the best career of this bunch to this point. But yeah, it's not there as much anymore. Interestingly enough, Kenneth Gainwell is 4 years younger, and he just had his first season of over 500 yards. And Nick Chubb had that down year. We were disappointed in it, and he had over 500 yards. Like they were only like 20 yards apart on the season. Granted, different circumstances and all that. But I think I would like, if you're taking a flyer on one of these guys, I would be more interested in the younger, fresher Kenneth Gainwell, who showed a spark for like the first real time in his career, versus Nick Chubb, who's clearly on the decline.
Yeah. And, Kenneth Gainwell gives you that option in the passing game too. Like, he's got that, on his side as well, whereas Nick Chubb might not have that gear much, anymore. And so Gainwell can really get out there and make some plays in open space, right? We can trust him to do that. And so I think that might be why, I would maybe put him above Nick Chubb in that case, in a situation like this. But yeah, so I think that a team would be, you know, Kenneth Gainwell is that guy that you bring in if you have, another guy that you feel pretty good about, but you want to diversify your offense a little bit. I think if you're looking for that, Kenneth Gainwell can really do that for you. Um, all right, so that'll do it for our discussion on the running backs here. I'm excited to see what the market looks like for these guys. I mean, Javonte Williams, he signed his deal. It's about 7 and some change million, or 8 million. It was a year, 8 million a year, and I'll be interested to see where some of these guys end up in relation to that. Because we're entering a time where we're not entering it, but we're in the middle of a time where, running backs aren't necessarily, from a money perspective, the most highly valued position on the field, unless you're a super duper duper star. And a couple of these guys have potential to be that super duper duper star, like Breece Hall and K9, but a lot of these guys aren't. And so I'll be interested to see what the market looks like this year, and where that might signal things are headed, with sort of the reemergence of the sort of Clint Kubiaks of the world, that heavy run game, outside zone, speedy running backs and power running backs type of offense that kind of lives and breathes on that. With the resurgence of that having some success, I'm interested to see if that has any impact on how these running backs are valued, and who thinks, if anyone thinks these guys can be something like that for them. So we'll see. But here we go. Dingers and Stingers time. So it is time for our Dingers and Stingers segment. If you are not familiar, this is the segment where we will give you a dinger, one good thing, and a stinger, one bad thing, from the world of sports for the week. So let's start with the bad and end with the good. And let's start with Drew. Give us your stinger for the week.
My stinger for the week comes from the baseball world, where just yesterday, right? I think Max Scherzer, it was announced, is going back to the Blue Jays. Now, you may be thinking, well, why is this a stinger? Because yeah, it's true. I don't really care that he's back with the Blue Jays. I think it's great that he's pitching another year. I think it's great that it's on a competitive team, and maybe we'll see some more playoff Scherzer, and maybe Scherzer and Verlander match up in the playoffs. That would be so cool. Whatever. The reason it's a stinger is because we broke down the AL East last week, and we kept saying Scherzer is, not a part of this Blue Jays team, probably. And then, because he hadn't signed with anyone. So now that episode makes no sense. Please watch it anyways, but yeah, it just doesn't hold up to the same degree now.
The whole thing's blown. I know that your guys' division predictions, hinged on whether or not Max Scherzer would be back as a Blue Jay. And now that I'm sure it changes the entire complexion of it. Yeah, it was kind of cool. Like, it's kind of this thing of like, well, he kind of probably put some feelers out there. No one was really interested. And then the Blue Jays, I saw like the note that his daughter wrote to the Blue Jays, being like, sign my dad back, or whatever, whatever. And that was cute for sure. So yeah, it's cool. Love to see Mad Max himself back at it one more time. As long as teams are willing to give a little money, I'm sure he will, want to keep going if his body will allow him to. So, good for him. But yeah, bummer for our show, because, that's the thing about doing these division previews one a week. we got to start early, and sometimes things
Hmm.
aren't settled yet. So you know what? We'll take the L's where we end up with them. But okay, so Matt, let's go now to your stinger for the week.
Yeah. I'll give a shout out. Mine is kind of a two-parter. There's two things that kind of made me sad or bummed me out this week. First one is in the baseball world as well. There was some comments made, some news out of Angels world that I'm sure Dallas you would be able to elaborate on or comment on yourself. But Artie Moreno, the owner of the Angels, kind of came out and said, there's been all this turmoil about his tenure as the owner and what he's done to this team, and he comes out and says publicly that he doesn't believe that winning is a top priority to Angels fans. He believes that it's safety and fun and all these things, and it's like those are all good things, certainly. But if you were to ask an Angels fan, if I was to talk to any Angels fan that I've ever met, they want to win so bad. Like it's just so clear the disconnect he has between his vision for the team and the fans' desire for the team. And that just pisses me off. I hate when owners just get in the way of things and don't understand the fans. Like that is just the worst. But on a very, very more somber note, one of the more sad things that's happened in NFL news recently was this week with the death of Rondale Moore. This is a guy who I followed pretty closely in college and was really high on, and I wanted this guy to be a part of my Rams, and he was part of the Cardinals and a few other teams, and he's kind of had this journeyman career, but it brought up the topic again of mental health and of it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. It's one of those things like you gotta check in with your people. And we saw the response from a lot of NFL teammates and people talking about like they had just been talking to him and they didn't think things were wrong and they didn't think they needed to check in on him and all these things. And it's he had just been happy and social, so it seems, right? And people put on this facade, and you see social media, and there's just so many things and just everything happening in not just America, but the world today. There's just so much happening, and it's like it's just a reminder to like check in with your people because people are going through shit, and they may not say it, they may not show it, they may not wear it on their sleeve, but people are going through shit, and it's just sad. I mean, this is the worst thing really that can happen. And it's never, there isn't silver lining to it, unfortunately. Like it is just kind of the worst thing that can happen and it sucks. So, not fun news. A stinger for sure. And yeah, it's just a bummer, man. Anytime it happens.
Yeah, happens too much, with NFL players especially, but athletes in general who just they feel like they have to, you know, hold it all in or, present a certain way because, people are looking up to them or in one way or another. But, I just hope that one of these times it prompts, teams to bring more people into their facilities, like employ more people who are experts in this kind of thing and helping players through, these kinds of issues, and the kinds of things that can plague them season to season, and not only in their professional when it relates to what they're doing professionally, but what they're doing personally too. So I just hope that teams can start investing in that a little more. I think that's somewhere where teams kind of fail their players a little bit is in the resources they put into or the lack of resources they put into employing people who can be around the team and help them out. I know most teams have a psychiatrist of some kind, like a sports psychiatrist or something like that, but a lot of those guys' main focus is kind of how the sport impacts them, how the game impacts them, and things like that. And so, not necessarily opening up about the personal, parts of their lives. So, I hope that teams can understand how important it is, and it's an opportunity, right, for the league and teams to stand up for players who might be going through similar things to kind of prevent something like this. I think it's an opportunity.
Yeah, and I would even take it a step further too and put some onus on the fans. Like, we hear the horror stories that players go through, and especially with the rise of sports betting in recent years, like these are people, man. Like these are people. And, Drew had with the Red Sox and Jaron Duran, like he talked about his struggle with mental health and some of the stuff that's happened with fan interactions. And it's unfortunate because sports is supposed to be this joyful thing, and it's supposed to be this like unifying thing, and it's supposed to bring specifically communities together. And like that sounds cliche, but it's like that is the purpose of sports, is to be fun, joyful, unifying games. And the fact that it's gotten to a point where fans feel so without consequence to say the types of things they say to players, and especially players who may be, underperforming or whatever you want to say. It's they're just, yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna start rambling and lose my point here, but it's just people need to start treating people better. Like, it, show some love, man. Like this world needs more love. It doesn't need hate, and it doesn't need negativity. Like there's too much of that already.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So, rest in the most peace, hopefully, and, hopefully teams will take a lesson from this and start helping their players out and fans too. But let's end with the good here, and let's go back to dingers. So let's talk about Drew's dinger. What do you got for us this week?
Yeah, well, I mean, on that note, this is about as lighthearted as we could get for my dinger this week. I think something similar was my dinger maybe at this point like a year ago. I don't remember exactly when that was.
Could be.
That the Backyard Sports video game series, computer game series is back. Like it's kind of there's been announcements and different things and what have you, but the recent one is that there's a new backyard baseball game coming out this summer for the first time in I don't know, at least like 17 years, something like that. Like it's been a long time. And there hasn't been a good one in over 20 years. So this is exciting. And today we got the first like look at what the game kind of looks like. We not like full gameplay, I don't think, but like there was a little trailer that dropped and some screen grabs. And I gotta say, like from what I can tell, it looks really like a really good mix of what was so great about the classic game with also like modern animation and making it better for like a modern video game world. And it's coming out to like all the consoles and Mac and PC. So like anyone who has any kind of access to video games or technology like could feasibly get this game. I can't imagine it'll be like super expensive either. Um, I don't know if there's any word on if there's like online play or anything like that, but either way, I think like that's going to be super fun. I'm definitely going to buy it this summer and try that out. I need to decide if I'm going to do it on PC or Switch. Um, Maybe both. If it's like not that expensive, maybe both, but we'll see.
¿Por
Need to
qué
make
no
that
los
decision.
dos?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the PC would be really fun for like the old school vibes, right? Like, 'cause that's
Right.
Hmm.
that's how we did it back in the day, right? And
Back in
so
class.
yeah, back in yeah, yeah, even back in the not so far away days, yeah,
I
even
mean, I
those,
still play the old one. Like I still have it, but
yeah, totally. There's ways, but yeah, so it's gonna be fun, man. Aren't they also making like a series as well with like a bunch of cool comedians in it or
yeah,
something, or a movie or
they
something?
came out they came out with an
The
animated
league?
special,
Yeah.
um, and it
Oh, a
was
special.
yeah, and and at the very end of that is when they announced that a new game was coming, and
Oh yeah.
it was pretty fun to watch. Like I don't know, like I probably if you were a kid you would like it more, but like it was cool to see the old characters and like they have yeah, it's famous people voicing them. If you follow comedy as closely as we do, you'd recognize the voices. Um, I don't know if they're making more of that. Like, it seems like they would have spent a lot of money for that to be a one like 10-minute video, but we'll see.
Yeah, that'd be fun. All right. Oh, cool. So, yeah, great. Looking forward to backyard baseball coming back. I'm looking forward to getting it for myself, no question. And
Hmm.
then, so yeah, let's go with Matt for your dinger this week. What you got?
Yeah, last week, my dinger was also about this guy, one of
Hmm.
my favorite players of all time, Robert Woods. I gave him all the credit and all the glory last week, so you can go watch that praise session. But, uh, dude, surprise, surprise, there was no official announcement, there was no nothing, and then the Rams dropped their official 2026 staff and coaches, and lo and behold, he is the assistant wide receivers coach. And is working under Eric Yarber, who's kind of like a Rams cult favorite. And, I
Hmm. Yeah.
imagine that the idea is that Robert Woods is there to kind of be the heir apparent to the receiver room. And I'm like, man, this is the guy who changed our offensive culture with McVay, and now we've got him back on the coaching staff. We've got a couple ex-players on the coaching staff this year, which is like new for McVay, and maybe just because of McVay's age, but he finally has ex-players old enough to coach. But our Super Bowl winning center, Brian Allen, he's back and he's going to be helping out with the offensive line. So it's cool to see a lot of these guys who are fan favorites wanting to be back with the team, and wanting to help out the team. So I am excited to see Robert Woods on the sideline as a coach this year. I'm excited to see what he can do with our young receivers, and should be good, man. I'm excited about it. I'm really happy.
Yeah, that's cool. I saw that too, and it was like, oh, I was thinking about it. I was like, oh yeah, we just talked about him on the show this week, so
Hmm.
that's pretty neat that he's going to come all the way back. He didn't just retire a Ram; he's starting his next phase
No.
of his career with the Rams too. So
Hmm.
that's great. Um, yeah, Cliff Kingsbury on that staff too, right?
Cliff Kingsbury, the
That
new
that's
assistant
cool.
head coach. We know
Yeah.
it's. I'm interested to see what the contributions are going to look like for him. Him and McVay have been teasing and toying that they wanted to work together forever, and now they finally get to do it. So we'll see what kind of magic they can cook up.
Think it's like rehab, right? For a coach, right? Like it's like he's
Hmm.
going there and just the
He'll be a head
idea that
coach next
he's
year.
yeah, just the idea that he's been in there with McVay, like that's going to be enough to propel him to some sort of role in the future. So,
Yep.
I think that's the idea here. But yeah, who knows if he can? Maybe he can contribute something meaningful to the philosophy. But who's to say? But yeah, cool. Robert Woods is back as a Rams coach, and that's cool. I wish the Seahawks would do that with some players that were fun, but they're all too busy hosting podcasts instead. So yeah, that's what they all
It'd
want
be
to do.
hypocritical of us to critique them. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, so that'll do it for this week's episode of Dingers and Stingers, our NFL show. Anyway, we had our MLB show earlier this week, and that was for our WBC preview. So check that out before the tournament starts. We talked about all of the teams who are going to be involved in the pool play, and how we predicted the pool play round to go. So check that out. And subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't already. You can follow us on socials like TikTok and Instagram. You can, of course, like this video, share it around, and let us know in the comments what you think about all the stuff we talked about. So take those running backs and you rank them, and let us know where you would, which one you want the most. And, where do you think Malik Willis will end up? Where do you think Kirk Cousins will end up? I'm interested to hear from you guys, and we want to hear from you and see what you think. So, that'll do for this week. But until next week, we will talk to you then. Thank you. Goodbye.